once, my ass.
I'm only 4. Bonjour, Monsieur Pussycat.
Cracking toast, Robert.
Start spreading the news.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the short podcast about short films. I'm your host, and we are discussing the Academy Award for Best Animated Short. Today's episode is about the 45th year of the award at the 49th Academy Awards, which celebrates the films of 1976. Today's guest is a very, very good friend of mine. Please welcome Byrne. Hello, Byrne.
Hello, how are you?
I am doing great, especially since you're on here.
Thank
It's
you.
a pleasure to talk to you. Been a good friend of mine for few years now, so it's just
Oh,
nice to
wow.
have all my friends on this podcast.
Yeah, I'm very excited to be here. I'm ready to talk about these.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. But before we get into those, just tell us what is your general familiarity with the Best Animated Short category?
I mean it's not strong. I tend to watch a few shorts every year at least, probably for the past 6 or 7 years. And the animated shorts are typically there's usually a couple that are pretty easy to find, so I'm able to go through those. But I would not say that I'm well versed in this category as I am like Best Picture or something like
Of
that.
course. Yeah, that's the story for a lot of people. Like, if they watch them, they try to watch a few recent ones, or it's just like, oh, I watched some Disney ones as a kid, or
Yeah, it's
yeah.
always the Disney ones.
Yeah, it's always does. They're always the most easily available. They screen
Yeah,
before some of the movies sometimes.
yes, exactly.
But yeah, and it's just like that's the whole point of this podcast, to give people a better understanding, a wider view. And I imagine you hadn't heard of any of these before even going into this episode.
No, not at all. Um, I I honestly I think I looked at my letterbox and you were the only person that's watched any of them. So
Of course.
I'm not shocked, but I am, I will say some of like obviously they're readily available on YouTube, but
Mhm.
they should be like more well known, I think.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. Like I have my favorites of the bunch, which I won't spoil now, but it's just like some of these I feel like this should be like studied in film schools and like just, but yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself. Uh, so let's just get into these nominees then. This year has only three. Our first nominee and the year's winner is Leisure, directed by Bruce Petty. This is the first and only nomination for Suzanne Baker, who is now the second woman ever to be nominated in this category. Hey, and the second one to win after Faith Hubley's 2 wins and 5 nominations. However, Faith was always alongside her husband, while Suzanne Baker is nominated all by herself. Also, Baker is the first Australian to win this category, so shout out to previous guest Zara. We're finally talking about your country. Suzanne, uh, so Suzanne Baker, she started her career as a journalist and television producer, traveling from America to the UK and back to Australia to work on various ventures, eventually joining Film Australia, Australia's government-funded film program, as their first female producer. We talked a lot on this pod about Canada's equivalent, the National Film Board of Canada, who at this point in time currently sit at 11 nominations without a win. Meanwhile, Australia just waltzes in with their first nomination and wins right off the bat, and it's their only nomination to this date. So good for them, I guess.
Good for them.
And that's democracy for you. But in any case, Suzanne Baker, as part of Film Australia, produces this film Leisure, which is the brainchild of Bruce Petty, famed Australian cartoonist and animator. He moved to UK in 1954 and began his career as a cartoonist, eventually getting his cartoons published in The New Yorker and Esquire magazine, eventually returning to Australia and publishing his so-called doodle bombs in local newspapers. Petty actually has quite a few animated films, and his career really began as an animator for a local advertising firm in the 1940s. Leisure is definitely his most widely known film, though, in no small part due to its Oscar win. The film is about the history of man and our endless quest for, well, leisure. Byrne, start us off. What did you think of Leisure?
So, well, I found Leisure really intriguing. It was definitely unlike a lot of the stuff that I've seen, but I'm also, as you very well know, I'm not super well versed in short films, but I found it really interesting as I mean, it almost felt a little bit nostalgic in a way, um, that was, I don't know, really interesting for the time period being kind of not very removed from the period it feels like it's being nostalgic for. And then also kind of coming across a little bit advertisement-esque was
Mhm.
kind of a little bit of a bold choice, because films aren't about being talked at and being narrated, every single move, and that's kind of what we see. Well, maybe not every single move, but we see a lot of that in this.
Mhm.
um, Definitely not a bad thing, but it made me lean in a little bit, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, it's like the film is basically it's kind of like a mockumentary of sorts, where it's just like trying to tell you the history of man. It's just like in our like I said, our eternal quest for leisure and our struggle against having to work for our living and all that. And it's just
Mhm.
like you got this posh British narrator throughout the whole time, and just it's kind of like a David Attenborough documentary or something, where it's just
Yeah, yeah,
like just telling the history of humanity. Yeah, and it's
yeah.
just like I did find myself really liking it. And it's like I apparently on my first watch, I didn't remember much for my first time watching this, but it's apparently I didn't like this that much, but I found myself just really kind of digging the whole vibe of it. Yeah, like I did think went on for a bit too long. Like it's 13 minutes, but in this realm that can last an eternity. Uh
Yeah.
but for what it is, I just found myself, just having a good time. Like it's a funny short, and I especially love just the whole animation style of it. Like I love Bruce
Yes.
Petty's drawings. I love his character designs, the way they all move, and it's just like, and when it gets more like kind when it gets more to the modern, quote unquote, modern day, the contemporary time, and it has a lot more of that kind of cutout animation that you see, where it's just like, or it does feel like they like just cut out parts of magazines and just paste them in there.
Yeah.
It's like that. It's always you see that kind of a lot around this time with like not that you've seen them, but it's like with previous
Yes.
winners like Frank Film and Great. It's just like this is a kind of animation style that's kind of getting popular with the Academy around this time, which is I didn't expect to find any like running themes amongst the winners in this kind of decade, when
For
everything
sure.
just so haphazard. But that is a theme that's coming around, and that's nice to
Yeah.
see. But yeah,
I haven't seen the other ones, but I really liked, especially towards the end when it kind of delved more into that, like, I guess more like collage kind of animation style instead of the more um
traditional.
traditional. I was gonna go like cartoonish setup that it has for a majority of the beginning. And I think it was like the final minute or two, I think, is when it got really the most interesting, when it goes into the complexities of, a modern world and modern people trying to seek that leisure or whatever.
Yeah, I
Uh,
did really like how he said leisure. Or it's
yeah,
just,
I definitely found myself being like, I think the David Attenborough comparison is especially apt, because I feel like he would say leisure, but also it's
yeah,
just, it
that's the
does
British way of
feel,
pronouncing it.
yeah, it does feel a little bit nature
Mhm.
documentary-ish.
Yeah.
And I find that I'm I don't want to say impressive because it's not like a hard style to recreate, but I appreciate the appropriation of that style for this purpose.
Yeah, it just really worked. It really works in this context. They did a good job like implementing
Yeah.
it and all that. Yeah, it's nice to see mockumentaries done right because sometimes I feel like they can often not be done right. Like there's a few in this category that are like, the kind of parodies of like how to's or self-help things. It's just like they could sometimes end up a bit dry and dull, but this
Yeah.
one didn't. It was pretty fun.
I think there is definitely like a very fine line and like a balancing act that mockumentarians have to walk while they're making these. And I think a little bit, I think the animation does pad it in terms of you know, like I don't think audiences will judge it as hard because it's able to have these kind of eye-popping images,
Mhm.
but it still succeeds overall in that kind of like poking fun, but still educating and being informative. And I think it pulls it off. I do think it's too long, but I think it pulls it off.
Yeah. It it does go on for a tad too long, like I said, but it's just like still it just does a good job with it. And like you said, I think the animation does do a bit of the heavy lifting in terms of keeping the audience engaged, just keeps everything moving very quickly and all that. It's not like a normal nature documentary, even where it's just like it spends a long time on just like, look at this bird.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that's where the David Attenborough comparison comes in, especially because there is that ability to just kind of sit there and say, look at this bird, isn't it cool? But then also be kind of taken on a journey that David Attenborough is.
Mhm.
I have a hot
He
take. I don't think David Attenborough is as fascinating as a lot of other people do, but he takes you on a journey that is meant to be kind of a narrative a little bit more intriguing than look at this bird.
yeah,
And I think that's what this short emulates, and honestly does it relatively successfully, even
yeah.
if it wasn't intentional.
The thing is, I'm citing like David Attenborough, but it's just like I'm not even sure I've really watched any of his documentaries. This thing I never watched like Planet Earth or whatever. I just know him through like cultural osmosis or like parodies even.
Yeah.
But it's
I
just like,
there was one on Netflix in I think 2020 that came out that was like supposed to be about climate change, but David Attenborough is like 100 millionaire. And I was like,
yeah.
maybe we should get someone else on this one. And
No,
that was
but
not.
he's the guy. You got to get the guy.
Oh yeah, you got to get the guy, but I don't know, maybe the guy could be someone who doesn't hoard wealth.
Who
Um,
knows?
sorry, this is not about David Attenborough.
You can make it about David Attenborough if you want.
Oh, that would be a very different podcast, and not a very short one at that.
We there should
So
there should be an Eat the Rich podcast.
we could do a special episode about David Attenborough if
Maybe.
you really wanted to, but I'm not sure that's the audience we're going for.
Yeah, we'll workshop this later. Maybe we'll come off our own podcast
Good
soon.
idea.
But
Good
yeah,
idea.
the point is that he's kind of famous for building these kind of stories in this documentaries. And
Yeah,
it's
and
just like,
sorry, go ahead.
oh no, that was pretty much it. It's just he makes stories, and I like stories.
Yeah, I also think, I mean, it's not said explicitly, I don't think, but the following of not maybe not the same but similar looking characters almost makes it feel like we're following the same character just throughout
Mhm.
this time period. And it gives a sense of this main character and we're following him and the narrator and like we're getting this narrative specifically about this person, and I think that helps it a lot as well.
Exactly. Like you got the central scrunkly guy, and he's really interesting. I like his design.
Yeah, I it felt very Schoolhouse Rock a little bit.
Yes. Uh
Yeah.
yeah, it's just like I've kind of like held off on mentioning Schoolhouse Rock too much because it's like really the thing about Schoolhouse Rock is that it's just taking from like the animation style of the day. Like it's taking from a lot of these nominees rather than, oh, these nominees are a lot like Schoolhouse Rock. It's the other way
That's
around.
fair.
Because like a lot of these animators do end up doing a lot of educational content to pay the bills with
Mhm.
like Sesame Street and things like that, Electric Company. Yeah, and Schoolhouse Rock is, I assume, one of those things that they end up working for. I don't
Yeah.
know who specifically animated Schoolhouse. Maybe I'll look into that sometime. Who
Yeah.
made Schoolhouse Rock?
Who did
Um,
make was that a PBS thing?
I would assume so, but I can't know for certain. I will look that up real quickly right now. Um, ABC.
That
So
makes
no,
sense.
but yeah. Do you have
Okay.
anything else you'd like to say about leisure?
No, I will say I was not blown away by it, but I do think it's successful in the, kind of low stakes goal that it has.
Yeah, yeah. It's not amazing by any means, it's but it is a good time for what it is, and I am not mad about it winning. It is a solid short film. Good job.
Yeah.
B plus. All right. So now let's get into the depressing nominees. Uh, so our second nominee today is Dedalo, also called Labyrinth, directed by Manfredo Manfredi. This is the first and only nomination for Manfredi, who started his career as a production designer, studying at the Academy of Fine Arts in Rome, until moving to animation in 1963, collaborating first with Guido Gomas before going his own way in 1968. Dedalo is the peak of his fame as an animator, especially considering he didn't make another film after Dedalo. He went back to production design after that, while doing some abstract painting as well. And as of this recording, Manfredi is still alive. He turns 89 this year. And at this point, I might as well add that
Wow.
Suzanne Baker is also still alive, and as is our next nominee, Caroline Leaf. This is the earliest year where each film has a living nominee. So let's celebrate that. And please
Woo!
may none of you die before June 1st when this episode comes out.
Oh God. Yeah, please don't.
It would be
We're,
it would be inconvenient for
we're
me.
rooting for you.
June 2nd, that's okay. Just wait
It's
until
not ideal, but it is okay.
yeah, it's more okay than before that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't want to micromanage you when you decide to die. It's just like you can be like Logan Roy, die whenever you feel like it.
Oh, that's
And
well,
that's
I
not
guess
a
it's coming out in
really
June.
spoiler because this will probably come out after the whole season's over.
Yeah, yeah. So
Anyway,
you really liked this one, didn't you?
hold on. I have to. I have one
Oh,
more.
you're not done with your spiel. Sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I need to give a plot description, which is kind of hard. It took me like 30 minutes to figure out what I should write for this point. But Dedalo is about two parents whose child recently died. The film is a meditation on grief and depicts the father's thoughts as he thinks his wife was at fault for their child's death, showing him murdering his wife and being sentenced to death, and also reflecting on their life before the incident. Uh, my first question I want to ask is, did you get any of that? Like, did you get the plot of this short? Because I find like when
Um,
looking at other reviews that a lot of people like watch this and just have no idea what happened. And I was like that the first time.
so I didn't have no idea. I knew it was about a couple that was going through something. I was not sure. I didn't get dead child.
Mhm.
But I maybe could have pieced that together. I did get the like murdering, but I thought it was a hypothetical, like, oh, what would happen if I killed my wife?
Mhm.
And then I thought the I guess what were flashbacks were like, oh, this is how I could move on from me murdering my wife.
Mhm.
Um, so I didn't have no idea, but I was clearly wrong.
Oh yeah. the thing is, it is very intentionally like blurring the line between reality and fiction, and I think it is actually meant to be. A lot of it is like uh just visualizing the father's like emotional state after, his child is died. Like he's not
Mhm.
actually murdering his wife or anything. It's just that's a
Okay.
visual representation of his pain and grief and anger, and like because he does like think his wife is at fault, but then eventually he reflects on his life before the incident, before, and it's just like, wow, things used to be so happy. And it's just like at first it's both like calming to him, but also it's just like he knows that he can't have that back. And it's just like I had this big light bulb moment, eureka moment, when I realized that the title, like Labyrinth, or also Dedalo, which means Daedalus in Italian or whatever.
Mhm.
It's just like the labyrinth is grief. Grief is the labyrinth that we can't escape from. And it's just like,
Okay.
and so
Yeah.
yeah, it's just like even though he wants to go back to the happy life, he can't because he will always be grieving his child. And so it's like I don't think he does kill his wife or anything, but it's just like
Sure.
it's like at the end of it, it's like he's not mad at her or anything, but also it's just like, damn, this is gonna just fuck us up forever.
Yeah, that is a little bit more fucked up than I thought it was.
Yeah.
Um,
But I'll also say I did
okay.
really love this. You were right. I fucking
I
love this whole thing.
okay, maybe if I watch it again with that mindset, with that understanding, I will like it a little bit more. Because as it stood when I like finished the film, I was a little bit underwhelmed.
Mhm.
But that's not that's also like literally having not thought about it at all past the runtime. And it's only what, 10 minutes long?
Yeah, I think like maybe 13. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, like it's not a long film. So I think had I been able to, chew on it a little bit more, especially knowing what it's about,
Yeah,
I
give
might have
yourself
liked
that
it.
space to think about it. Like I did spend like 30 minutes just trying to piece this whole thing together. It's like
Yeah.
reflecting on the images because I was like my first time I was just like, "Oh, wow, this looks really cool." But I have no idea what it's about, but it's just like now I'm like, "Oh, damn, I'm doing a podcast about this. I should really like sit down and try and figure out what the fuck this thing's trying to say." And I'm glad I did.
Yeah. I like, oh, I was gonna say something. Fuck. Um,
It's okay.
oh,
Take your time.
yeah, no. I think the the ability to sit with it would probably help because the images are extremely powerful, but I feel like in the moment as you're watching it, it's a little bit hard to just gather the collection of images that you're seeing because they're not all linearly
Mhm.
ordered.
Exactly. It's hard to piece together a story, especially since it is kind of told out of order. It's
Yeah.
a lot of non-literal stuff. It's just like it if you aren't like intensely paying attention like I was, it's just like it can't. I definitely see like why so many people have a hard time. Of the few people who have seen this, most of them seem to have a hard time piecing it together, even if they still do end up really enjoying it.
Because the images are extremely, first of all, well created.
Hmm.
It's a gorgeous film to look at. Um, but also very powerful. I mean, a lot of the moments are impressive and moving
Hmm.
and uh, provoking.
Yes.
I don't
Like
know.
I especially love how like the main man, the father or whatever, like his like hollow, deep set eyes are just so evocative. Like that is an image that has just stuck with me ever since I first watched this however many years ago.
Mhm.
Just like I
Mhm.
I think about like the way that character's designed like so much. And it's just like, and also when I was like when back when I wrote this script like a few days ago, oh, it's just like I found myself wanting to just watch more of Manfredo Manfredi's films, and luckily there's like this YouTube video compilation that had like 5 or 6 of his short films in it, and it's just like, okay,
Cool.
I'll just watch this whole video. And
Nice.
I'm really glad I did, because a lot of them are just really great.
Yeah.
and and I think there are like that like hollowed out like face like comes up a few times in a couple of the other ones, but some, not all of them are like as creepy as this one is. Like this is definitely the peak of his more like unsettling imagery, though
Uh-huh.
it does come up in some of his other films. What I was
Interesting.
surprised about was just how just beautiful and moving a lot of them ended up being. It's just like it's
Yeah.
and even this one, it's just like while it starts out, very dark and gloomy and like unsettling, it's just like by the end of it, when it does get to the point where he's like, reflecting on his life with like before the incident, it's just like it does get, it's very beautiful, very moving. It's
Hmm.
really, it's really powerful stuff.
Yeah. I think there's definitely like clear evidence of talent for not just storytelling, and I don't want to say necessarily storytelling because I didn't get it, so maybe that's a whole other thing.
Yeah,
You know, but there's a clear talent for creating, emotional images and being able to, create a reaction, which is a big piece of it, even if the audience can't decipher the motivation between two adjacent images in the film, that doesn't mean that they're not going to feel anything from this. I think it's
exactly.
really impressive that Manfredi is able to still get reactions, even out of people that don't fully understand the narrative.
Exactly. Like that's the power of art, it's just like, even if you
Exactly.
don't know what the fuck's happening, it could still fucking hit you.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to bring up, did you watch that Netflix short film a few years ago, If Anything Happens, I Love You?
Yes, I
Oh yeah,
did.
and that was also Oscar winner in this category. And it's just like, when I was analyzing the plot of this film, I was just like, wow, this is just like a good version of If Anything Happens, I Love You. Because I fucking hate that movie. I hate that short film so much. Because it's like, for those who haven't seen it, it's this short film about these two parents who lost their child in a school shooting, and it's just like, it just feels so emotionally manipulative in like the worst way. And it's just like, sure, the animation's nice, but I just hate how it just tries to tug at your heartstrings in a cheap way. It's like, I feel like this does the same kind of feelings, but in more realistic and also more artistic way, let's say. And I just like, wow, this is so much better than that.
Yeah. Okay. I don't hate that short as much as you do.
I know.
I think that short's maybe not. I don't think that short should have won that year. I remember being very vocal about that.
Mhm.
Um, but I definitely I think you had it at number 5 for that year, and I was not quite as
Oh yeah,
against it as you.
most people hated Yes People
I
of that year the most.
I hated Yes People. That was not a good one. But I think this is probably a more successful version of that film. The Labyrinth is. But I also think that they're so diff I don't know. I think they are still distinct.
Mhm.
Um, but with the similarities, this is definitely the superior one.
I'm glad you agree with me on that front. I was a little scared that you're going to end up saying like, oh, that's one of my favorite short films ever. And I just
No, no,
shat on it for a few minutes.
I would say I probably still like it
Yeah.
as a film, but I don't think it was the best of that year. I like it's a little bit I think it's a bummer that people like that's their like modern example of an animated short film.
Oh yeah, because that
That's
was on Netflix and stuff. It's just
yeah,
like
because it was so widely talked about when it came out.
mhm.
'Cause it was 2020.
2020. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it came out like when everyone was cooped up, and I think there was talk about school shootings at the time, and it was
Mhm.
yeah, it benefited from being accessible, whereas these other films that might have been much better were not.
Yeah, it's like even like Burrow, like that was that was on Disney Plus and whatever, but it just wasn't as widely seen and was widely discussed. That didn't become the.
Yeah, because it would have been widely seen had Soul gotten a theatrical release date, but
I don't think it would have. Like that was a one of the Pixar Spark shorts, and I don't think most of those ended up being in
to
theaters.
my understanding, it was supposed to release in front of Soul
Mm.
because they did come out on the same day.
Yeah, it's saying that like it was released on Disney Plus alongside Soul, but it's like I'm not sure it would have been. Uh, oh, you're right. I'm just looking down at production. It's just like yeah, it would have been released in theaters before Soul. Uh,
Yeah,
I'm sorry. You're right.
no, that's okay.
Here,
It
you
was
take the podcast. You can have it.
I get ownership now.
You have bested me in the field of knowledge.
Well,
The
okay,
battlefield.
I don't think that counts because you know everything about like shorts from the 40s, and I know a little bit about shorts from 2020. So I don't think it's quite the same. But but yeah, I think Burrow was a great short film, by the way. I know that's not what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Um,
We can have tangents. It's fine.
no, I know, but it's I think Dedalo is definitely a superior, more interesting visually and more interesting narratively
Yeah.
than If Anything Happens, I Love You.
Yeah. Even just like the category as a whole, like this is probably one of the most like visually striking films in this category ever. Or like,
Yes, I would believe it.
mhm.
I,
It's
I
just like,
also and we'll get to this, but I really liked the look of our third film.
mhm.
I probably preferred the look of the third film
Oh, wow. Okay.
to this, but it's also an excellent looking film.
Yeah. When you're talking when in this category, it's just there's just a lot of films that look really great because
Yeah.
animation is just such a visually oriented medium. As it's like people want to make their shit look great, and it
Mhm.
often does. So
Yeah.
sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes we get really cheap films that are bad, uh,
Yeah.
but usually they're pretty good and they look really nice.
Mhm, mhm.
Uh, yeah. I do you have anything else you'd like to say about Labyrinth Dedalo, or would you like to just move on to that third nominee?
We can move on. I think I've said everything.
All right. So our third and final nominee is The Street, directed by Carolyn Leaf. This is the first and only nomination for Leaf, as well as producer Guy Glover. This is also the 12th nomination for the National Film Board of Canada, still holding that record for most nominations in a row without a win. Let's see if they can break it next year. If you remember last season, or even just 2 episodes ago, you would have heard about the film Clay or On the Origin of Species, directed by Eli Noyes, an early entry in the art of what would become known as claymation. Eli made that film in his animation program at Harvard, and later, as part of that same program, Caroline Leaf made the film Sand or Peter and the Wolf, which itself is an early innovator in the art of sand animation, specifically where you take a piece where you place sand on a pane of glass that's backlit, and thus the sand blocks the light. Take enough pictures of the sand in various positions, and you can get yourself an animated film. During Leaf's career, she would make many films using sand animation, but she was also fond of paint on glass animation, which is exactly what it sounds like. You paint with slow-drying oil paints on a sheet of glass, and the resulting animation often has some fascinating smear look to it. And that is what she used for today's nominee, The Street. But to continue with her career, uh, it wasn't long until after she graduated Harvard that she was invited to join the National Film Board of Canada, which is where Guy Glover comes in. He was just a longtime producer at NFB. And fun fact, he even wrote the previous nominee, The Romance of Transportation in Canada. Fun fact. Leaf worked for 20 years at NFB, leaving in 1991 and deciding to focus on painting rather than animating after that point. Going to her website, you can see some of her most recent work on there, and she's got it divided into categories. You got oil paintings, artworks on paper, pencil sketches, drawings on her iPad using Procreate, and onions, where she has all her charcoal drawings of onions. To those of you listening, I want you to go to carolineleaf.com, find the onions tab, and tell me which onion you relate to the most. I quite enjoy small onion, although sturdy onion is calling my name too. And Byrne, I know you're just out of the loop on this, but you can go there later too, or maybe while we're talking, I'll send
I
you the
will
link.
be.
You can figure out which onion suits you the best. But before I get too far off track, let's go back to the film we're supposed to be talking about. The Street, based on a short story by Mordecai Richter, is about a grandmother who is on the verge of death and how her family copes with taking care of her and her eventual demise. Byrne, what did you think of our final nominee?
This was my favorite of the nominees. I know it's probably a hot take, but
Of the three people who've seen all three of these nominees, yeah.
yeah. This was my favorite. I okay, I'm taking a class about short stories right now. We did not read The Street, but I'm having kind of a moment that I'm really into short stories right now. So I think this was like a very, I mean, obviously not a traditional adaptation, but having the kind of more traditional adaptation beats of like, or narrative beats that would come in a short story being present in this film, I think had me kind of, you know, kicking my feet in the air, giggling.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, like you could, it's very clearly like based on, some written work. It's like it goes through the dialogue or the prose of the work very uh very straightforward way. It's just like using the animation to tell the story alongside it.
yeah. Um, I also am just generally a fan of using animation to adapt written work because uh, written work is obviously so conducive to imagination and letting kind of readers run wild with the words that the author is giving them. And so to take that and animate it, literally having no limits on what could be created, I think is very exciting. And I think this was the right move for Leaf and the rest of the team in adapting this in terms of medium at least.
Mhm. Yeah. I wasn't sure what else to say, but
Yeah.
yeah, I like this one too. Uh, uh I I'm not sure what I even really to say about it because it's like my thoughts on this one are just kind of simple. It's just like, yeah, I liked it. It's a nice story. I like the animation. I did go and watch a few of Caroline Leaf's other uh films, like her other sand animations and pan and glass animations. She even has this one. It was one of her last films called Two Sisters, where it's just like she animated it by like etching directly onto 70 millimeter film and like dyeing certain parts of it to like give it
Wow.
the color. It's just like she's such an accomplished animator, so
Mhm.
great at everything she does. Uh, this is not one of my favorite short films of hers, though. It's just like
Mhm.
I I just don't think I really connected story as much as I connected with some of her other films. As it's like
Sure.
I've it moved a bit too slowly for me. I think it may have been it it moved with the prose of the original story. I assume, at least I didn't read it, but uh
Mhm.
it it just moved so much like a book that it felt like, oh, they're just kind of taking the words and putting it on screen. It's just like I would have liked more in terms of actually adapting it. And it's just like I don't know. I don't know what I want. I just
Sure.
like I just
You just don't want what we got.
I do want what I got. I like what we got, but also I I feel like it could have liked it more, and I'm not sure what exactly would have made it maybe like it more. I just it's a good film, but it's not my favorite of this lineup. It's
That's
just
fair.
yeah. I just don't have much to say about this one. Do you have more
Yeah.
to say? Let's you just go on and on.
I probably do have more to say. I think the animation, first of all, I really liked it. I the paint on the glass technique sounds familiar, and it almost seems
As a
something
person
like
with a
it.
disability,
I
Turbo.
just got an ad for
I
TurboTax.
did hear that by the way.
But I think it's really successful in kind of creating a distinct look. And obviously it doesn't use well, okay, it uses black and white, and I think the binary um that it uses is really interesting because it doesn't go very deep into like grays.
Mhm,
It uses largely um pure blacks and pure whites with a little bit of lighting here and there.
mhm.
But I think that kind of, and there's also the occasional color, but I think the distinction and that contrast is really nice. Um, just kind of makes the image pop a little bit more. And there are also, I think it's so, it looks just painstakingly crafted, and
Yeah.
I am I always like when you can just kind of tell how fucking hard it was to make.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
that not that everything has to be hard, not that everything has to be poured over and impossible to make to be good, but you appreciate it that much more when it is.
Mhm. Yeah, I really love Karen Leaves. Like she has a very great good sense of like movement, and it's just
Yes.
like so often it's just like the quote unquote camera is just flying around these scenes, and just like that is so difficult to animate, especially to animate well, and it's just like
Mhm.
she is just so good at it. And
Yeah.
I just want to point out in one of her other films, there's this one called Interview where like her and another animator just like talk about each other and their careers. And uh in one of Caroline's segments of it or whatever, she talks about like there's a shot of her like hunched in the dark room, like making her segment of the movie or whatever. Her and it's just like I'm
Mhm.
just imagining her doing that like over this pane of glass that's backlit with the oil paints and whatever. It's just like God, animation sucks. Like it's great, but it sucks to do. It's just like
Yeah.
I could never be an animator. One because I'm not like artistically talented, at least in that respect. But also it's just like it seems so frustrating. But
Yeah, I think animators have much more patience than I do,
mhm.
and that's why I'm always very impressed when they're able to pull something off well. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I I think the early images of this film are probably my favorite. Just like the trying to find where it is. The grandmother sleeping in the bed and then the mom throwing the blanket onto the grandmother. And it's just a gorgeous like sequence.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's very well animated. It's very nice to look at.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
basically I don't
I
I
feel
like
like there's
I
more to say, but it's also like I can't think of more to say.
there
Do you want
definitely
to?
is, but like it's a relatively straightforward narrative.
Yeah, it's just like
Um it has some really interesting themes, like the way that the kid deals with death,
Mhm.
and also like it wasn't super explicit about it, but like the Jewish kind of traditions
Mhm.
that they're keeping up. Um, I wish it had been more, it talked more about that, or I don't know,
Yeah.
but still a good. It's also 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It's a good little romp.
Yeah, thinking about it, like I feel like I'm not asking Caroline Leaf to, make this a 20-minute film or something, but it's also like I feel like I
Mm,
would have liked this story a bit more if it had more time to really delve into the different characters. Because I did enjoy
yeah.
like the like the differences between the mom and dad and the two kids, and it's just like I would have liked more time with them. Like I enjoyed them, but it's just like I feel like a short film isn't the best way to tell the story. Hey, and it's just like the film is good, but I feel like I would have liked this more as like maybe like a live action film where it's just like we watch uh or you just see these characters. And it's rare for me to be like, this animated film would have been better in live action. But it's just like for this story specifically, I think I would have liked a bit more time, and I think a live action medium would have served it a bit better, in my opinion.
I think that's a fair assessment. I don't totally disagree. I think I think it would lose some of the charm and the I guess the visual intrigue.
Mhm.
But I also think that it might play better as a narrative had it been live action.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, which is kind of a bummer to say, but
So I guess really it's like I should also emphasize that's like nothing needs to be live action the same way nothing needs to be animated. It's just like it's just about deciding what medium you want to tell your story in. And you can
yeah,
always tell any story in any medium. But it's just like I don't know.
yeah,
Uh as we're like winding down here, I did send you the link to Caroline Leaf's Onions page.
I saw that.
I am very interested. I just love the fact that she does have a section on her website listed as onions, and these are all good onions. There's 5 onions here. I
There's
want you.
it's yeah, it's all good onions. I think my favorite is the green onion.
Ooh,
Just kind of appealing to me. I like that it's sideways.
yeah, it's standing up. It is
Yeah.
letting you know it is here. It is queer. You better get used to it.
And she so easily could have just turned the canvas, but she didn't.
Yeah, she could have put it sideways.
Yeah.
Though I guess the shading, like it's like, yeah, it's going down on the table. It's
Yeah.
not like it's against the wall or something.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, these are all good onions. And yeah,
There it
I
is.
do want everyone who's listening to this to go to the tweet that this episode came out on and just quote it with like what your favorite onion was.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. Anything else you'd like to say about the street?
No, it's good.
All right.
And I think more people should watch it.
Yeah,
Oh, there's a bunch of comments on YouTube. People saying, "Oh, this made me cry." That's crazy.
that's crazy.
It's got this has 40,000 views. Did not
Yeah,
realize that.
yeah.
Anyway,
The NFB is so great because they have a whole YouTube channel, and like they upload all well, probably not all of their films, but it's just like they have so much of their like backlog on YouTube in great quality,
that is
or their
very cool.
website as well. It's just like thank God for nationally funded film program that
Yeah.
makes this a feasibility. It's just
Hmm.
like it's such a great resource. It's like I oftentimes I will just like go to their channel and just like watch a few random films, just like whatever pops out at me. Or it's just like, and I subscribe to the channel, so sometimes they upload a new film. It's just like, oh, I'll
Hmm.
check this one out. And it's always so great just to randomly discover just just anything that just happens to pop up. And it's just like, and like
Yeah.
half the time it's just like I go on Letterboxd and it's like it's only got like 5 watches or something. It's just like, damn. But it's fun to explore, to wander into the unknown. Just pick a film at random and just see what happens.
Hmm.
Hmm. But yeah,
Shout out to the NFB.
yeah, NFB, you're doing great work. Love you so much. Mwah, mwah. Uh, but now that we've gone through and talked about the 3 nominees, let's rank them all. Bird, I want you to start us off with your number 3.
Oh, I'm gonna have to say leisure is my number three. Leisure, if we're being American about it.
Leisure, leisure, whichever you want to say. Yeah. My number 3 is The Street. Like like I said, it is it is a good film. I love the way it's animated, but at the same
Yeah,
time, it's just the story didn't grab me as much as I would have wanted it to. As this, I I feel like it could have been there are ways that it could have hit me more emotionally that this one just didn't.
for
Uh,
sure.
Number 2.
I should probably say I guess Labyrinth for this one.
All right. My number 2 is Leisure. It's just it's a solid film. I enjoyed it. It's fun, and that's about it. We went into that in depth. Uh,
Yeah,
but your number 1 is The Street.
my number one is The Street. I don't know. No, I just really enjoyed it.
Hmm. Damn good movie. And my number 1 is Dedalo, the Labyrinth. It's just again damn good movie. Very
Hmm.
well animated. Kind of really dark, but also really great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
great films. Good films.
Good films.
Yeah. I I didn't remember this year being as good as it ended up being. Is this like these are just 3 good movies? It's just
Hmm.
like I'm glad. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, before we end our show, are there any final thoughts you'd like to share, Byrne, or anything you'd like to promote?
I don't think so. I don't have anything going on right now, so
All right. I guess that's it. Well, thank you, Byrne, for coming on the show.
yeah, thank you for having me.
And thank you, listener, for tuning in. This has been the short podcast about short films. Until next time, goodbye.